The fourth arc of Skybound's Transformers series begins with issue 19. Much like Volume 3, Volume 4 opens with a character-centric flashback. The character in question is none other than Megatron. And right off the bat, I have to say that I found this to be a particularly satisfying placement for what essentially amounts to a spotlight issue for the iconic Decepticon leader. Megatron's absence in the series early on was palpable, but the creative team gradually and methodically teased his return, culminating in the showstopper event towards the end of issue 18, where Megatron puts the Decepticon infighting to rest with a single word. Rather than jump straight into the present-day conflict between the Autobots and the Decepticons on Earth, issue 19 delves into a significant, formative event from Megatron's past, where he is captured by an unseen character who employs a Quintesson prosecutor named Desimir and hordes of Sharkticons to subject Megatron to a series of seemingly unending trials. Although formidable, Megatron falters every time when he faces Mechanicore, a massive mechanical dragon that Desimir either pilots or merges with. I don't know, the specifics are unclear, but in any case, it seems similar to something like a Pretender Beast shell, with Desimir wrapped inside of the beast somehow. Regardless, Megatron falls to the Mechanicore over 500 times. The Decepticon leader is defeated and then brought back time and time again, and he is simply unable to beat the monster with his current abilities. These trials are designed to break Megatron down, to make him feel insignificant, small, and lacking in true power. But they're also designed to eventually build him back up, to make him the equal of Optimus Prime. Complete with a matrix of sorts, Megatron is compelled to participate in these trials thanks to the mysterious artifact in Desimir's chest. Although not explicitly named in this issue, this item is presumably the evil reflection of the Autobot matrix of leadership. Once Megatron has been thoroughly broken, Desimir is ordered by his unidentified master to move on to the next stage of their plan, which is remaking Megatron, giving him a new alt mode as a Cybertronian handgun with the ability to control the will of those who wield him. To allow Megatron a taste of his new power, and despite Desimir's protests, the always off-panel entity orders the Quintesson to pick up Megatron, allowing the future Decepticon leader to finally do what he had been unable to do for hundreds of trials, which is to kill Mechanicore by mind-controlling Desimir, coercing the Quintesson to fire his immensely powerful gun form, decapitating Mechanicore, and heralding the arrival of the deadly tyrant of the Energon universe. While some may have preferred to just jump straight into the action in the present day on Earth, I found this issue to be a refreshing change of pace for several reasons. First of all, I feel like it was necessary to take a step back and reintroduce us to the Energon universe version of the character in order to gain insight into how this Megatron is different than the ones we've known in previous continuities. There were hints that there were some unexpected qualities to Megatron's physiology dating back to the Energon Universe 2024 special, where he reattached one of his missing arms, seemingly by magic, something none of the other characters are apparently able to do. There's also the still lingering question of whether or not Megatron's arm was influencing and possibly corrupting Optimus Prime. And all of these mysteries came to a head in issue 18 when Megatron revives Ravage with what appears to be the same Matrix equivalent in his chest. It's been established that there is something different about this version of Megatron, but we've gotten almost nothing in the way of answers. Now, all of this is a roundabout way of me saying that I think this was the perfect time to pull back from the current story and answer some lingering questions about Megatron that have been simmering for about a year now. And also, it's just kind of nice to take a break from the multiple threads from the main title and give some significant page time to a major character that has been mostly absent. The origin story for Megatron provided in issue 19 is satisfyingly distinct from what's come before, despite sharing some similarities to previous incarnations. Specifically, we've bypassed some of the earliest and most commonly revisited facets of Megatron's origins picking up with a version of the character who is essentially already formed as far as personality, temperament, and outlook goes, but the events of issue 19 push the character further, making him the Decepticon equivalent of a prime, as well as a pawn to a mysterious force in one fell swoop. In other words, this is not the humble beginnings of Megatron as we're usually shown, but the beginning of Megatron as we know him in the Skybound continuity. While this issue provides some insights into Megatron's past and his uncharacteristic new powers, issue 19 also leaves plenty of questions that will no doubt factor into future events. It's unclear whether Desimir and his master are still part of the main Quintesson force, strictly speaking, or acting alone as some sort of splinter group. Is Desimir's master even a Quintesson? Or something else entirely? Whatever the case, we're potentially looking at a new cosmic threat for the Energon universe, and I'm pretty happy to see the Quintessons appearing outside the pages of Void Rivals, as it helps position them as far-reaching and formidable antagonists that could potentially leave their mark on the shared universe as a whole, rather than be relegated to a single title. As with the flashback story centered around Starscream during Volume 3, Transformers number 19 features a guest artist. Apologies if I butcher this, but Ludo Lullabi, as well as guest colorist Adriano Lucas, neither of which I was familiar with, but I was extremely impressed with both. I really enjoyed Lullabi's work on this issue. I know it might not be to everyone's taste, but the figures and the posing in here are just so incredibly kinetic. There's some really wild motion, and it makes for some very fun and expressive action during Megatron's trials. I love this sequence with the Sharkticon latching onto Megatron's arm, and Megatron responds by just throwing the Sharkticon down and obliterating the guy with his fusion cannon. Then there's another bit with Sharkticon's overwhelming Megatron, and that was another highlight for me, building to whatever this move is, some kind of explosion. I don't know if this is just a new thing or if it's a reference to the whole linking to a black hole ability from his G1 profile, but it kind of reminds me of G2 Megatron's ability to generate neutron implosions, although this is decidedly a lot more contained and small scale, but I don't know. Maybe I'm just misreading what's happening here, but it seems like an explosion of some sort. Anyway, it looks cool, whatever it is. And if that panel isn't a reference to previous Transformers lore, there's a good chance that Mechanicore is. This dragon has some similar design cues and a similar name to the unused Mechano Beast concept art by Floro Derry. Chris McFeely's video, The Untold Story of Transformers the Movie, explains that this was an early concept for the combined form of the Anabots, a group of animalistic Autobots that Hasbro was considering including in the early drafts of the '86 animated movie. The Anabots would be withdrawn from the movie and reworked into the Predacons, so Derry's work on Mechano Beast went unused. Admittedly, the visuals are not an exact match, but it's really close. It would be quite a coincidence if Mechanicore was not intentionally modeled on Derry's concept art. Considering that we saw the creative team dust off the unused name of Ulktar for Starscream's origin, I think it's a safe bet that this was another deliberate homage to another unused bit of Transformers history. And I'm really digging this willingness to pack in some very obscure nods, by the way. I think if you're going to do the self-referential thing for a series that has repeatedly done the self-referential thing, this is a great way to keep it fresh and mix it up a little in between all the familiar, expected stuff. Drawing on the minutiae of how the brand was formulated at the concept stage is a bit more fun and surprising than returning to the same quotes and character or story ticks that we've seen over and over, in my opinion. So kudos to the team for that. Now, as far as the body count goes, we've got another Seattle-Tacoma situation where counting the number of Sharkticon casualties is just a fool's errand, considering the majority of the 500 trials happen off-panel. I guess it does raise questions about how many Sharkticons these guys have, or if Desimir is just reviving the same group of Sharkticons over and over again with the Dark Matrix like he's doing to Megatron and like Megatron did to Ravage, but I digress. We'll add a note for the running total about the Sharkticons, and I'll add one for Mechanicore, even though I'm not totally sure if the giant beast is actually alive. But, I mean, Desimir seems pretty broken up about it, so I guess we'll give it to him. Overall, I absolutely adored this issue. Judging by some of the scuttlebutt I'm seeing online, it seems like issue 19 might be a bit more divisive than previous ones, but as far as I'm concerned, this was a real highlight to the series as a whole. Not only do we finally get some substantial time with the most iconic villain of the franchise, but the creative team reinvigorated the idea of a Megatron origin, something we've seen done to death in other iterations. And they did this in a way that I found extremely satisfying and exciting by working in the Dark Matrix angle, by turning Megatron into a triple changer, and introducing a puppet master behind Megatron's rise to power. Plus, I think the ending is really well done with Starscream wielding Megatron. It ties in nicely to what we've seen of Starscream's past and reinforces the idea of a destructive chain of consequences that we've seen play out with various characters across both factions. Overall, yeah, I really loved this issue, but I'd love to hear what everyone else thought of it, whether you liked it or not, and why. So feel free to let me know. Thanks for taking the time to watch this. Hope you got something out of it. I'll see you next time, and I hope you have a good rest of your day. Goodbye.